Hello, my name is Charlie Waite, and over the years people have sometimes asked me questions about my photography and about my background in the theatre, and so I thought, well, now's as good a time as any to have a go at answering them in a very informal fashion. Well, perhaps the second one I might not answer. It could be a rather humorous and perhaps a mischievous answer, but I don't particularly miss acting. Interestingly enough, what I miss is the acting fraternity, the actors, who were and are a marvellous collection of people whose lives have developed over the years, and sometimes it's been very, very tough for them, and sometimes it's been amazingly exciting and unexpected. And it's true to say that they don't, on the whole, seek fame. They had fame thrust upon them, and I think that's really an important thing. Actually, they're perfectly normal people who sometimes become sort of celebrities, which perhaps part of them would think is good for their career, but as individuals, I think they can probably find many aspects of being well known very invasive and difficult, and especially for their privacy. But moving on to what made you steer your career from acting to photography, I know the answer immediately. It's the lighting directors in the theatre. And what's so special about them is that they are able to bring a play to life and inject atmosphere and inject a feeling of thrilling, exciting part of the play, suddenly to emphasize with their lighting skills. They can convey to the audience so much, and I think that they play a hugely important role, probably as important as everybody else in the production, but they get not nearly enough, sadly, credit for that. It's usually the wardrobe mistress, the set designer, the director, the actors, but the lighting director doesn't really get enough credit to my mind. Well, many photographers have influenced me. I don't even remember half of them. But of course we're influenced by everything we see. We're visual people, all us photographers, so we're constantly being influenced by things. But my great mentor, I think, has to be Ansel Adams, really, who has so many wonderful quotes. And one of them is, of course, recognition and pre-visualization blended together in one single moment of awareness. I absolutely love that. He's a man who photographed for 60 years, written many books, over 25 I think, and his famous ones were the camera, the negative and the print. And if you were to reread those, I think we would all grow to understand, perhaps more than we do already, that he was a huge name in photography. After all, the zone system essentially became, the characteristic curve of films, and then the histogram. They were all really courtesy of Ansel Adams, and I think it would be a good thing to go back to some of his books. And one of the lovely things that was said about him was that he was able to transform geographic reality to transcendent emotional experience, to transform geographic reality to transcendent emotional experience. And my word, when you look at some of Ansel Adams's images, you do feel that you're transcending to emotional experiences. I think it probably does, yes, to a degree. Certainly an awareness of probably the business of putting a roll of film in your camera, and then appreciating that its latitude is not as great as digital. And of course, in Ansel Adams's case, he would be exposing for shadows and developing for highlights. He could compress a subject brightness range and extend a subject brightness range. He did work in the darkroom, but initially he exposed his film exactly as he planned to. Very skilled in that respect. So I think probably yes. I think it does enhance my digital post-production using film. I'm not terribly good at digital post-production. There are others who are much more skilled than me, but I do my best to sort of muddle through. That's a really good question. I don't think that photographers are particularly withdrawn people, but I do know that we all love the business of our photography. We love the expectations, we love the surprise, we love the hope. We love the interaction, we love engaging with the natural world. We are passionate, all of us are absolutely passionate about landscape photography, preserving the landscape. We like to think that we're pretty green, we're pretty environmentally aware and fully engaged. We love noticing. We never really think about refreshment and food when we're photographing. There are so many of us now who love landscape photography, and I really admire so many of my colleagues, my very distinguished colleagues, and I think it would be fair to say that we all share the similar goals. We want to produce a photograph that in some way will have parity with what we saw and of course what we felt. So yes, I think we probably do just love our full immersion into our, what I call, production. That's an extremely interesting question, and to be honest, I don't really have the answer. I do think that we should all print more. I think we should have a portfolio of perhaps maybe 10 or 12 images, our best images. And I think probably the answer is to certainly have the website, but when it's time to show somebody one's work, don't just say, in my view, this really is worthwhile saying, don't just say, here's my website, have a look at it, because the chances are not everybody will be able to do that. But I do think that having an independent a meeting with a potential employer who might wish you to do some photography, then go along with 12 of your best images in a portfolio as prints, and then they'll pick them up excuse me, out of your portfolio case and look at them and enjoy them. And they're very tangible and they can smell and feel them, and I think that's a much better plan than just asking them to look at your website. Very different business, showing prints as opposed to showing somebody your images on the monitor. To be quite honest, I can't remember, but I do actually remember one particular place that was excuse me, very, very exciting, because I knew it had potential. I knew if I waited long enough, things would happen. And it was near a place called Amiens in the Somme. And the pleasure was really to be found in the anticipation, the expectation that all would come well. And it finally did. It was some trees. Surprise, surprise. How we all love trees, us landscape photographers. And so I think it would be fair to say that that was the place I remember really very, very well indeed. It was a marvellous, marvellous waiting in happy expectation. And finally, I was rewarded. Well, since starting Landscape Photographer of the Year in 2007, and preparing for it before then, probably 2005, I have been travelling a lot. But UK Landscape Photographer of the Year is about photographing for the UK, photographing the UK landscape. And I genuinely feel that it's time for me to go back and look at our beautiful landscape, which I do as often as I possibly can. You know, the classic legendary places, the Lake District and the Peak District and Yorkshire and so on, and many others of course. But I'd like to go back again. And it's not just because of current circumstances, I really would. And I feel very strongly about that. So I'm going to go back to places and to try and explore places that I haven't been to. And I'm looking forward to doing that immensely. So I still will travel, perhaps not as far as I used to, but I shall look forward very much indeed to finding the United Kingdom again. I really do. Well, I hope that's of interest to everybody, and perhaps we shall do this again and field some more questions, and I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I do hope you've enjoyed this. I certainly have enjoyed reminiscing a little bit. Thank you.